How you doing, baseball fans, and welcome to another edition of the Brushback with JP Ricciardi, brought to you by Cornerstone Bank, built on trust. Are you ready to open an account with Cornerstone? Go to cornerstonebank.com for more information. I'm John Arezzi, and joining me to give his expert analysis on the World Series, the meltdown by the New York Yankees, and the winners of the 2024 Fall Classic, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the former GM and front office executive, the baseball lifer, JP. JP, how you doing?
Hey, Johnny, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm hanging in there. It was a late night last night. This World Series is over, and it was quite an amazing Game 5 last night. The Dodgers are now the kings of the hill. They are the last team standing, the World Series champions. We'll discuss it all here today. And you have a special guest coming on with us in just a bit and batter up with JP, the World Series edition. Who do you have today?
We have Shohei Davidi, writer from Toronto, who's covered the Blue Jays for a bunch of years. He's basically the top baseball analyst up in Canada. Has done a great job. Is well respected in Canada, well respected in the United States. We're going to get his take on the World Series. He was there for the most of it, had his finger on the pulse, watched it, and get his breakdown on what he thought the Blue Jays season was this year. So. Really good baseball guy and a guy that's really his career has continued to rise. It's been fun to see because we were there from the beginning. So very excited to have Shai on.
Yeah, you've known him for many, many years, just when he was starting out. So we look forward to that. But JP, the Dodgers take the series against the New York Yankees 4-1, winning the World Championship. The Yankees avoided the sweep, breaking out and winning Game 4, 11-4. Then last night, up 5-0 after home runs by Judge, Chisholm, Stanton, and Garrett Cole cruising. The roof caved in, and what I have to say might be one of the most shocking collapses in World Series history. Your hot take on last night's deciding Game 5 clincher for the world champion Dodgers.
Well, I thought Garrett Cole pitched a great game. I thought Garrett Cole put his whole heart and soul into that game, and he said, "Hey, this is why I'm here," and he left it on the field. I think, unfortunately, the Yankee defense let him down. I mean, that's a catchable ball by Judge. That's a play Volpe makes every day. He just makes a bad throw, a ball in the hole. He made the right decision. He just made a bad throw. And then the Rizzo one kind of was the icing on the cake. I mean, Rizzo was in no man's land. Cole didn't get off the mound, and that play kind of summarized the whole inning for him, and it allowed the Dodgers to get back in the game. I thought if the Yankees won that game, I thought the series would go 7 because I thought Rondon would pitch better than he did the last time out. That could possibly even the series, and then it would get to 7 games. And who knows at 7 games? But, the Yankees shot themselves in the foot in so many ways. They didn't run the bases real well. They didn't defend real well. They only had production from 2 or 3 guys in the lineup. Obviously, Judge struggled tremendously. But you look at the Dodger lineup, and that 1 through 9, they found a way to chip away and get you. I mean, to me, the credit goes to the Dodgers. Great job. I thought I thought their manager Dave Roberts did an amazing job. He really massaged the bullpen really well. I was a little worried about the bullpen start, but he knows his team better than we do. I thought he made good moves throughout the series. I thought he managed really, really well. Not that Boone didn't manage well. I just think the Dodger players really responded well to being in the World Series. And, they had 2 guys, Otani and Muncy, who really didn't play well, but the rest of the team really picked it up. And I think the Dodger depth in the trades that they made at the deadline really showed up.
Yeah, certainly. But let's get back to that 5th inning.
Sure.
The 5th inning, 5th game of the World Series, Yankees up 5-0. It starts off with Kiki Hernandez getting a single, and then Tommy Edmonds reaches on that drop fly ball, which I think Judge makes out of 1,000 times. He makes it 999 times, or maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
That's when you knew. When you saw that, that's when I knew something's going to happen here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the baseball gods, people talk about. And when he dropped that fly, it just kind of silenced the crowd, and they were shocked. And then you get that fielder's choice with Volpe, who's been a Gold Glover last year, young kid, makes a
great. He made the right play, just made a bad throw.
And that's what did it. But then Garrett Cole steps up. He strikes out Lux. He strikes out Otani, who looked bad, and we're going to get into Otani in a little bit.
Sure.
And then Mookie Betts comes up, and it's still 5-0 at this point. Yankees still have that commanding lead. We have a clip of that play last night, which cratered the Yankees season.
Ground ball right side. Rizzo. Nobody at first. Incredible. Atrocious defense from the Yankees, leading directly to a Dodger run in the fifth.
Again, the Dodgers take nothing for granted. Watch Mookie Betts run. He knows he's got a chance right there. And that spin and the delay right there, Cole was thinking he could take it by himself.
Well, it's a play that both players know that should have been made.
Yeah.
I think Cole, I thought he pitched his heart out last night. I think he was tired, both physically and mentally, but he did get off the mound originally, and then he kind of stopped. But I think the ball had a little bit of a spin that basically allowed Rizzo to have to stay back on the ball enough. It was just an in-between play.
Yeah.
Couple of points, though, for any young players out there. You put the ball in play, you never know what's going to happen. The Yankees struck out a ton in this series. The Dodgers put the ball in play. Mookie Betts put the ball in play and hustled down the line. Mookie Betts came up again, put the ball in play, sacrifice fly, gave them the lead. The Dodgers made more contact than the Yankees did. So for all the people out there who don't think contact is important, the Dodgers just won a World Series because they put the ball in play.
And the hustle that Betts showed racing down that line. And that's what did it. And then, of course, who comes up next but Freddy Freeman? And he drives in two. It's 5-3. Former Blue Jay Teoscar Hernandez doubles to center, scoring Betts and Freeman. It's 5-5. Muncy walks. Kiki Hernandez, who started the inning, hits into a fielder's choice, and that's the end of that inning. But it took it deflated Yankee Stadium. It deflated the team. It deflated the series. And you know the New York media, JP. You've been there. You've seen it for many years.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
What do you think is happening today in the New York media, from talk radio to the tabloids? What do you think is happening?
I gotta believe, I haven't seen anything, but I gotta believe they're questioning Boone. They're questioning if Boone should be the manager. They're all over Judge. They're all over Rizzo. They're all over. Look, it's New York. It's going to happen. The reason the Yankees lost, their starting pitching did not pitch well. Outside of Cole, I thought Cole did what he was supposed to do. The rest of their starters did not pitch well, and their lineup was not deep enough to move the ball enough to create other opportunities outside of Judge. The Dodgers won the series because they had more depth. Otani and Muncy didn't play well, but the depth in their lineup carried through, that they all played and carried that load. And I thought the Dodger bullpen pitched really well, and I thought Dave Roberts managed a good series. So the Dodgers deserve to win, and congratulations to them. And it'll be a long off season for the Yankees, but I'm sure they'll reload and figure out a way to get back. But they got some serious question marks. And I will say this: I thought the two best teams in baseball got to the World Series this year, so I was happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely correct. They were the two best teams in the game this year. So let's take a look at the incredible series that Freeman had. First, he had a challenging year, JP. He had the illness of his young son with a rare neurological disease. He had to take him away from the team for a while. Then he had the ankle injury towards the end of the season, which compromised him. But did he deliver in this World Series? Home runs in 4 consecutive games that had never been done before. And then you go back to his last World Series. He had actually hit home runs in 6 consecutive games, including that amazing grand slam that really set the tone for this year's series. Your take on Freddie Freeman?
Well, I mean, how can you not say anything but great things? I mean, amazing series. I think he's good, the all-time RBIs for a Dodger in a World Series. The Dodgers, off the top of my head, have had to have been at least 15 World Series. So he's in some elite company there. And, he's a great player. Everybody knows he's a great player. But he's a great player who stepped up, and he stepped up in a spot where they needed him because Otani was struggling, and he had a bad leg. So it was just incredible. And the grand slam set the tone for, I think, the series. It was very Kirk Gibson-esque, which is still a sore spot for me because that beat us.
Right.
But, how can you not be be just in awe of what Freddie Freeman did. I thought his at bats throughout the series were great. I thought the fact that, and I know he's the MVP, but the trainers for the Dodgers need to be the MVP too because they got him back on the field, and he just played amazing. And look at Freddie Freeman's a great player. He just took it to another level, and it was amazing to watch. It was amazing to see. I think the grand slam and game run goes right up there with Fisk's and Joe Carter's home runs. It's hard to beat Joe Carter. I mean, he won the World Series with that home run. So him and Mazeroski are probably, the two biggest home runs in World Series history. But, Carlton Fisk and I would say Freddie Freeman doing what they did and Kirk Gibson probably go up there too. So he put himself in some pretty rare air.
Yeah, and getting back to Freeman and the way analytics are today, and even how GMs evaluate players, there has been a lot of talk about Freeman and Olsen as far as their contracts as first baseman. They don't age well. I mean, and Freeman injured, he comes back, he has this amazing series, the MVP. How important are those analytics? I know we'll get back to the World Series, but when you're saying his contract and it's not, it's overvalued, first baseman age differently, but you still have a guy with heart and soul and steps up in an amazing way to be the MVP and hit those home runs and just kind of spark this team with the rest.
And he had a great year, John. It wasn't like he had a bad year. He didn't hit 250. I think every contract should be looked at by the player.
Yeah.
If the player, I don't care what position they play, if the player performs up to the contract, then the player was a good player. I think Freddie Freeman is still one of the best players and one of the best hitters in our game. He combines contact with power.
Yes.
So why wouldn't you want Freddie Freeman? I mean, I can't think of, there's probably one or two teams in baseball that wouldn't take Freddie Freeman. That's because they've got Guerrero at first or they got, somebody else at first. But you got to love a guy like Freddie Freeman. And I think he really exemplifies what the Dodger lineup is. They make a lot of contact. And because they make a lot of contact, they put a lot of balls in play. They put a lot of pressure on the other team. And, I think anybody who throws shots at Freddie Freeman on the contract, they better really take a big step back and figure out what a good player looks like.
And he's a class individual. He's an old school type of guy, and I'm so happy for him. Even though as a Mets fan, you're not supposed to be, but Freeman stepped it up, and I loved his story this year. I loved the happy ending with his son. His son was at the game last night. It was really a feel good moment for this 2024 World Series. I want to get to Otani as well, because Otani, who you've called and the best player in the game or maybe in history. And we were looking for that wonderful Otani Judge matchup for this series. But in game 2, he slides into second base, results in a slight shoulder separation that definitely JP compromised him for the remainder of the series. And he played through all 5 games. He didn't look right. As a matter of fact, in game 3, there's introductions for the opening lineup, and he comes out in a sling. He winds up going 2 for 19 with a double, 2 walks, no home runs, no RBI, strikes out 5 times. Do you think Otani, with the shoulder injury, could they have rested him? Would that have made a difference? Or do you have to put him in because he's the biggest marquee player in the game?
Well, I think they were going to play him unless it was, going to cause more harm to the shoulder. But, he definitely was not himself.
No.
Good enough to play, good enough to be a presence, needed to be in the lineup if he could do that. I don't think the Dodgers did anything wrong. Otani was definitely hurt. You could see it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to give him a mulligan on the World Series because it wasn't really the Otani. The question I now have is, this is his second injury. Now he's getting a little older. Now some injuries are going to start chipping away. Does this become a reoccurring problem? So as players get older and they start getting dinged up a little bit, you've seen it with Mike Trout. I hope Otani stays healthy because I think we're watching one of the greatest players who's ever played our game. I mean, you could say Bonds, you could say, there's a lot of great players that you could put in that category, but he's certainly in that conversation. I just hope now these little injuries that start popping up don't slow his career down and we don't get to see the best of him going forward.
Yeah, and those shoulder injuries could be tricky, even though it wasn't a full-blown separation. It was a slight separation. But shoulder injuries tend to be reoccurring over time.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see if he has to have surgery to kind of lock that thing down, and
Right.
then you got restrictions with that. So look, at no one wants to get hurt, but
No.
anyway, great player. Just didn't have a
Yeah.
great series, but he's going home with a ring, so he's really happy
He's
about
going
that.
home with a ring. That's why he went to the Dodgers, and they have such an elite team right now. But we wish Shohei the best in the offseason, and maybe he'll be pitching next year. But anyway, he's the marquee player of baseball right now.
Yeah,
Uh, Last week, you spoke about somebody is going to step up that you least expect to have a great World Series. I can think of one guy who did really well, shortstop Tommy Edman. He hit 339 with a 903 OPS as one. Would you agree with that? And are
yeah.
there any others too?
Yep, I think that's a fair assessment. I think he stepped up really well. I thought Trinan was another guy that really did a good job out of their bullpen. I thought the Dodger bullpen pitched really, really well. So as a group, I would say that they kind of collectively stepped up, but individually, Edmonds played really, really well. And when Betts and Otani and Freeman and Smith are taking all your attention, and all of a sudden another guy comes out of nowhere, Edmonds, and just really becomes a pain in your butt. It just makes that lineup deeper and longer. And he really stepped up and did a great job, and really, was a difference maker.
And he was he was a trade deadline acquisition, wasn't
Yeah.
he?
I thought the Dodgers did a great job at the trading deadline. They got Flaherty to help their staff, and then they ended up getting little pieces that helped them. Edmonds being one of them, and those little pieces ended up becoming big parts. So I thought their World Series was won at the trading deadline.
But the series as a whole, I know you would have loved it to see it go 7. I think everybody would have. And I think that yesterday in the beginning of that game, when the Yankees went up 5-0, people were planning on going to LA.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't happen. Congratulations to the Dodgers. And
Yeah, I was waiting. I was hoping we were going to have an epic, every game, great game.
yeah,
And maybe I was foolish to think that way, but I really thought it was going to be an epic series. On a whole, I'd give the series a C plus. Somebody said I was a tough grader, but with those two teams and all those great players, I was hoping for something magical like the '75 World Series or the '86 World Series. But anyway, still a decent World Series. I think the two best teams got there. So, and congratulations to the Dodgers and their entire organization.
absolutely. It was just that one inning that might have taken it to Game 6 and a Game 7, but we'll never know for now because the Dodgers are the world champions. We will be back with a closing hot take on this World Series right after this word from our sponsor, Cornerstone Bank.
Hello, I'm Steve, crisis aversion specialist, and by that I mean parent. My favorite tool of the trade? Right Student Checking from Cornerstone Bank, offering a dramatic reduction in calls like, Dad, I can't afford the campus ATM. Dad, do I have a spare? And of course, it's me on Nick's phone, mine's in the pond. These days, they're busy saving money and discovering autonomy. If you have a student, start them banking right and enjoy the silence.
Dad?
I was never here.
All right, JP, the final hot take at the end of the World Series last night. Dodgers are celebrating on the hallowed ground of Yankee Stadium. And there was one player in the dugout for the New York Yankees. They had all cleared out. They'd all gone back to the clubhouse. And it was number 22 was Juan Soto, who was just there watching. And he had a bat in his hand. And it seemed like he didn't want to leave the field. And he gives himself the sign of the cross. He points up to the heavens, and then he walks back to the clubhouse. Here's a guy that now has kind of the world in his hands. He's going to be the premier free agent. It's going to be the biggest free agent signing since Otani. There's not very many others like both of them, but now it's Soto's decision on what is he going to do? Where's he going to go? Is there a bidding war? Is it Mets and Yankees? I want to get your hot take on Soto and the upcoming free agent class, and your gut on what's going to happen as we enter this postseason.
Well, baseball turns the corner quick. I mean, the GM meetings come up, so all the stuff will start, and you'll start hearing it all. You mentioned an interesting thing, and I was just thinking as you said that, I think off the top of my head, that's the third time the Dodgers have beaten the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. I think 55 when they won at Johnny Padres pitched at Yankee Stadium. I'm sorry, it might be the fourth time. Koufax might have beaten them in Yankee Stadium in 63.
63.
81 might have been won in Yankee Stadium, and last night. So 4 of their 7 World Championships were against the Yankees, and they might have been in Yankee Stadium, which is, I might be wrong, but that jumped out at me when you said that. As far as Juan goes, top 5 player in our game, had a great year in New York. I think he's going to sit back and think of what's the best opportunity for him. I think our games become 4 uber teams. I'd say the Phillies, the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets. And I think that Steve Cohen really got a taste of what it's like to be close to a World Series.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to – I think he's going to set the bar on Soto. I think it's going to be interesting to see if he wants to go back and play with Judge and be in Yankee Stadium, or if he wants to go across. I'm sure Lindor is going to be in his ear. I'm sure they're going to have every possible person coming out of the woodwork. Steve Cohen's wife, I believe, is Latin American.
Yes.
So I got to believe she's going to have a big say in getting in front of him. So I don't think he's going to have as many suitors as people think.
I don't either.
I think there'll be 3 or 4, and that's all he's going to – he's going to have 2. He's going to have the Yankees and the Mets. So that's really what he needs. The world is his oyster right now, as they say, and it's going to be interesting to see if he feels any kind of loyalty to playing with the Yankees or any kind of connection playing with the Yankees, or if he's willing to risk it. But don't forget, this is a young player. He'd already played in Washington. He's already played in San Diego. He's played in New York. So he's not afraid to changing, and I don't think he's locked anywhere. So I think this is going to be a total money grab, which it should be. I mean, he's a great player.
Yeah, last night in the post-game press conference, he said that he's going to entertain all offers.
Why wouldn't he? And he's represented by Boris. So this is going to be it'll be
a fascinating winter meetings and off season, and there'll be a lot of interaction, and there'll be a lot of talk about Soto. So we'll have to wait and see where he goes and where he ends up in 2025.
The fun starts.
Oh, yeah, the fun is going to start pretty quickly, and it's amazing that, here we are, entering November, and then before you know it, spring training and pitchers and catches in February. So
happens fast, but let's take a little bit of a breath.
Exactly. All right, JP's Hot Takes is brought to you by Percy's Appliance Outlet, featuring brand name appliances at up to 80% off regular retail prices. They're Worcester's largest dealer of home appliances and electronics, serving Worcester for over 80 years, and they are your 80% off discount outlet. Go to Percy's.com. Check out all their great, everyday, great deals, refrigerators, electronics, washers, dryers, bedding, so much more. Call 508-438-6800, and they have same-day or next-day delivery options available as well. Percy's, they are your 80% off appliance outlet. And now let's hear a little bit more about Percy's Home Appliances.
Percy's Appliance Showroom, featuring a huge selection of the finest brand names from value to luxury at the guaranteed lowest prices. Whether it's an individual appliance or package, buy with confidence with Percy's Price Match Guarantee. Percy's offers exceptional customer service, fast, expert installation, delivery, and removal. For same-day shopping, look for the green in-stock buttons on Percy's.com and available long-term interest-free financing. Percy's, first on Gold Star Boulevard, Worcester.
Now it's time for Batter Up with JP, brought to you by the Worcester Bravehearts. And I'd like to let everybody know that you can experience New England's most anticipated sports summit, where tomorrow's industry leaders connect with today's game changers. Dive into cutting-edge strategies, innovative partnerships, and exclusive opportunities that will elevate your career in sports management. This will be at the New England Sports Summit. It takes place on February the 14th. At the Hart Center at the College of the Holy Cross. It is presented by the Worcester Bravehearts. Make your plans now to attend. All you got to do to find out more is go to newenglandsportsummit.com for all the information you will need to be part of this great event. And now it's time for Batter Up with JP. Our guest on Batter Up with JP is a premier baseball insider and columnist for Sportsnet in Canada. He's been with the company since 2011, and he brings to fans the latest news from the Toronto Blue Jays clubhouse and from around the major leagues. Let's welcome to Batter Up with JP, Shohei Davidi. Shohei, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Very good.
Hi, good having you on, buddy.
Yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to it, JP.
It's been a little bit of a role reversal now. I get to ask you the questions.
I know. I was thinking about that. It's all the bad questions that I asked you. Now it's your turn for payback.
You know, it's funny. I wish I could take a picture of it, but my wife hung a picture up in my office, and we must have made a trade in Toronto because I'm in the middle of maybe 30 writers, and I always send this out to people and say, "So you want to be a GM?" And and I'm trying to look and see. I think you're in there somewhere, but it's a pretty big scrum. But anyway, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and I was always good. I'm always good in the scrums. I'm a smaller guy, so I'm good at fitting in the cracks there, and kind of lurking, finding a spot where I can hear well and ask a question when the time comes. So a lot of times I kind of fall out of or slip in between the cracks in those
There's
photos.
a couple of heavyweights there you had to really work around. I'm looking at Wilder and some of the other guys, but no, anyway, for our listeners out there, Shy has really, man, I remember when he started, and he's come a long way, and he's a big baseball insider now, and your career has really taken off, and you've done a great job, and you're so well respected now. I'm really happy for you. You know, when I was in Toronto, there was a lot of writers to deal with, a lot of papers. You were always fair. You were always honest. You always ask good questions, and I'm not surprised to see the way your career's going out. So I'm really happy for you.
That's really kind of you to say, JP. And you're the first GM that I covered on a regular basis. I was around the team a little bit at the end of the Gord Ash era, but I really started covering the team in the end of 2002. So that was, I believe, your first season, your
Yeah,
first full
yeah.
season there. And you had no reason to be good to me or to give me a lot of time, but you always did. And I'm always grateful because I learned a ton about how the game works, a ton about where the game was going because you were certainly ahead of the curve with a lot of the things that were coming from an analytics standpoint at that point in time. And you know, I'm always grateful for the your willingness to take my questions and help a young kid out.
Well, anybody who likes to talk about baseball, it's fun, you know, and that's how I think you learn. I think it's a little sad today. I mean, you know, you're out there every day and you're seeing it, and unfortunately, I mean, you're a young guy, but you're becoming one of the older guys when you think of like the people up there. And you know, I always enjoyed talking to writers who wanted to talk about the game, you know, and put aside whatever it was personal stuff or this or that. But I miss the part of the really, and I go back to the Tom Verducci's and the Joel Shermans and the, you know, the Lupicas and the, you know, all the guys in Boston. I mean, so many good writers that you learned a lot from, and you had good baseball dialogue. And you know, I haven't, you know, first year away from being right in the middle of the game. But it's really surprising to me how little and little that is available, and I think it's a component of our game that we're really missing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the game has changed so dramatically. I think it changed a little bit when I was starting, or it changed dramatically, I guess, where the Moneyball era, for lack of a better way to put it, really emphasized to teams how they needed to adapt and how certain organizations, Oakland certainly was at the forefront of. But the degree of change, I would say, from 2002 when I started to like 2015, 16, 17-ish, the sort of the beginning of the Statcast era was one thing, but the pace of change since then has just been so fast. And everybody, even people who maybe haven't wanted to delve so deep into analytics and data, have really been forced into. And in some ways, the amount of learning that they've had to do is maybe taken away some of those traditional discussions, and there's been all these new ways and deeper ways to look into the game that sometimes we can just simplify a little bit. It's like, is this guy able to get barrel on baseball, and you know, can this guy find a corner, and maybe not have to worry so much about, you know, what is my swing speed, what is my swing pad, is my swing path, is my launch angle just right, is my spin rate on this pitch proper, am I getting the proper shape, can you get to the spot, and finding a way to meld that and find that balance, I really think is where the game is struggling in a lot of places. And you know, I think the Dodgers are probably better than anyone at doing it the right way.
And it's a perfect segue into what we want to talk about. You just got through covering the World Series, and you got to see it up close and personal. I picked the Yankees in 7 because I was thinking that Cole and Rondon were capable of pitching the way they have in the past, and I thought that would have the ability to nullify the Dodgers. But obviously, Rondon didn't pitch well in the one start he did. Cole pitched very well in both starts. Obviously, we all watched the World Series. We all know how it ended. We all know I was a little disappointed in it. I thought it was going to be a little bit more high drama because of the so much talent. But there's so many things that happened in a short series. Why don't you give us your takeaway of the series from your perspective, having your finger on the pulse, being right there?
Yeah, I think your summation of it is actually really good, JP. And like game 1 and game 5 were where my expectations were of these kind of back and forth, high drama, high stress games. And then I think the other contests, you just saw the Yankees' flaws, and also in 1 and 5 too, where the Yankees' flaws were just really exposed and the difference in depth. And, this is every organization talks about, oh, we got to build depth, we got to build depth. But what organization has ever built depth the way that the Dodgers did this year? I mean, like their starting rotation that's out injured right now would be the envy of most clubs. And they're out there and they still have enough pitching to win the World Series. And then they have some key bullpen guys who are out. And they have some guys playing hurt in Freddie Freeman. And they just find so many ways to max out. And people often say, oh, they're just throwing money around. It's easy to win when you've got, $350 million payroll or whatever it is. But they do all the little things well too, whether it's, getting Anthony Banda from Cleveland, and then he's throwing 3 leverage innings or making 3 leverage appearances for you in the World Series, or getting a Brent Honeywell off waivers to help paper over a gap. Those are the little things that allow them to survive the inevitable attrition. And I think that's what shone through in this series more than anything. The Yankees needed a little bit more from their bullpen at different times. It wasn't there. They needed more from the bottom of the lineup, and save for game 4 and game 5 a little bit, it wasn't there. And, the Dodgers, Tommy Edman helps win them a game. They get contributions from all these different spots. Shohei Otani is not slumping. Teoscar Hernandez is getting big hits. They just had more weapons. And that to me was a real clear difference over the 5 games.
And, having lived through the Red Sox Yankee dynasties in the early 2002, 3, 4, whatever, having to compete against them, I think what people lose sight of is money can do a lot of things for you. And believe me, I'd rather have money than not have money. But I think what the Dodgers did really well is what the Red Sox did in 04 and the Yankees did in their prime. They didn't use the money. They got the big players, but when they needed the ancillary pieces, they went out and they got them. When you think of, Rojas, Edmonds, Kiermaier, who didn't even play for him, but was a possibility, move Chris Taylor to the bench. Just the little things along those lines and the bullpen pieces you said. People don't realize how those small moves become a major part of the team. And I thought the Dodgers did an amazing job, excuse me, at the trading deadline. And like you said, you're watching this series, and all of a sudden, Chris Taylor's playing left field in the 9th inning. That guy was hitting 20-something home runs for them a couple of years ago. And they just really built the core of their team around the great players, but the supporting players really did a great job for them. And the last piece I'll say about the Dodgers in this conversation right here is, isn't it amazing when you got players that put the bat on the ball? I mean, Mookie Betts hits a ground ball to first and hustles down the line, but he made contact to force Cole to get off the mound. He doesn't get off the mound. That produces a run. Mookie Betts comes up, sacrifice fly because he moved the ball. The Dodgers struck out less than the Yankees, I believe, and I think that's a testament to having players who make contact.
Yeah, I mean, it's constant pressure, right? And you let up for a heartbeat, right? Like Aaron Judge takes his eye off the ball for a second, it goes off his glove, and that's the floodgates. And I can think of 2 postseason games that I covered that reminded me of that, and I was thinking about both of them during that fifth inning yesterday. First one was the seventh inning by Texas in Game 5 of the 2015
Yep.
ALDS. Of course, the Jose Bautista bat flip, where Elvis Andrus really had the inning from hell, the defensive inning from hell, and allowed that. And because the Blue Jays kept making contact, that allowed them to eventually get to the point where Jose Bautista is able to hit that home run, get to the point where, Sam Dyson is forced to make a mistake. And then the other thing I thought of was Game 2 of the American League wild card in 2022 when the Blue Jays collapsed to the Mariners. And it's funny when you don't take care of the ball, when you don't make an out, you can see how the momentum snowballs on you. And you kind of got that sense that, Cole was just fighting so hard to reverse the momentum and to reverse it. And he was almost there. And then he almost you saw him kind of let up. All right, I've got the ground ball. Rizzo's going to get it and we're out. And if he had just been able to not just kind of just go through that play, follow through. But I like Boone's explanation where he thought that he might have been mentally exhausted at that point. And I can actually see how that could happen, just being around those types of collapses where it's almost like, okay, this is the moment where I can breathe, and you breathe earlier than you should. And just that little difference, and that changes, that ends your season.
I mean, think about the inning. You got a 5-0 lead, a very catchable ball that Judge drops, a ball in the hole that Volpe makes the right play, just makes a bad throw, and a simple PFP play that's practiced every single day in spring training that he doesn't get off the mound. And like you said, I think it's the pressure of the Dodgers continually put it on him. I thought the Yankees really got exposed. The lineup wasn't as deep as maybe most people thought. I think when you have a very short lineup, Torres didn't perform as well as he did in the playoffs. Chisholm had, one or two big hits, but not what he had done. In the bottom half of their lineup was atrocious with a lot of strikeouts. So I thought the Yankee lineup got exposed, and the Dodgers just continued to just put pressure on them. I thought Dave Roberts really managed a very good series, and I was kind of skeptical when he had to go to the bullpen game. But I also think Buehler bailed him out too.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing is this kind of almost gets lost a little bit, but having Vesia back and having Gratterall back really mitigated the loss of Evan Phillips, of course, but it also just gave him more weapons so that bridge to Kopech and Treinen late, and if you're going to, depending on how you're going to use Hudson and where you're going to use him, but he just had way more weapons at his disposal. And you think about how much Weaver had to be used, how much, with Canely, did some of his usage catch up with him in that inning there? You just saw that the Yankees were thinner in so many ways. Like the lineup, absolutely, that was clear. And then you can take away Shohei Otani, and Max Muncy was silent in the series, and it was not an issue at all because of how deep the Dodgers were. But as soon as Aaron Judge stopped hitting, all of a sudden you noticed all the other gaps. And so the Yankees rode essentially three guys as far as they were going to take them. They rode a few bullpen arms. They had an advantage in the rotation, which didn't shine through. And that ended up really changing a series that I was convinced was going to go at least 6, if not 7. And I was really stunned by how quickly it petered out.
And you make a good point. If you think about it, if last night holds up and Cole does what he's supposed to do, which he did his job. Now it's 3-2. You're going back to LA. Rodon, I'm going to bet he's not going to be as bad as he was in Game 2. You got a chance to win Game 6. Now you get it to a Game 7, and you never know. So obviously last night was a pivotal game because of, obviously you lose, you're out. But I thought the Yankees had a chance to get this to Game 6 if they were able to just finish that one off last night. But you make a really good point, I think, in the series against Cleveland. Judge, Soto, and Stanton all hit. And that just carried them. I didn't think Cleveland was as good as the Yankees anyway. But I will say this, and I don't know how you think about this, but I thought the two best teams in baseball got to the World Series this year.
I think definitely the right team from the American League got there. I think you can make a case for Houston. You know, I'm stunned that they went out the way that they did. I really liked. I thought we were going to see some sort of Astros Yankees rematch at some point in the American League, and I'm kind of disappointed.
But Scooble, when you could throw that ace in a short series, that can spin the series. So
absolutely.
Go ahead.
And it's hard. It's kind of strange that of all the wild card series, we've only had 2 of them go to 3 games thus far. So it also kind of really amplifies the importance of Game 1 in those short series. But I actually think that the 4 best teams in the playoffs might have been in the National League. In the Dodgers, the Padres, certainly the Padres gave the Dodgers the best run in the first round there. The Mets were really solid, and in a different world, the Phillies, this might have been the Phillies too. So I think for the first time in a long time, we can look at the 2 leagues and we can say that the American League feels definitively behind the National League right now. And I can't, it's been a long time, I think, since we could say that in a realistic way, but there's just a lot of the barrier to entry is much lower right now in the American League, strange as it is to say that.
So let's get off the World Series. I thought it was, from an entertainment standpoint, I mean, Freddie Freeman played amazing. It did amazing things. He broke some records. That was incredible. I'd have to give the World Series a C+ for me. I was expecting more higher drama, but outside of Game 1, last night was a good game. I'd say last night and Game 1, but I was expecting. I had higher expectations. I'll just leave it at that. But I do think, arguably the 2 teams in baseball got to the World Series, and that was great to see. But in general,
tough grader, C+. I think you give me
an
all-time.
It's the World Series.
But you give me an all-time classic moment like the Freeman walk-off and the parallels to Kirk Gibson in '88. Like I'm in the B. I'd maybe give it a B.
I'll give you the B, but I'm still scarred from Kirk Gibson's home run because as soon as Eckersley walked Mike Davis, I turned to my wife and I said, "We're going to lose this game." She says, "Are you crazy? Eckersley's in there." I said, "Diane, he hasn't walked a guy all year. He walked Mike Davis hitting $128. This is not good." So once Gibson hit the home run and then Freeman hit it, I had like flashbacks. So, but as far as like exciting Game 1 is up there with anything. But when I think of great World Series, I go back to '75, like the Red Sox and the Reds. Every game was better than the next game. So for me to give an A for a World Series, it's got to be 7 games, and it's got to be 7 real good games. But I'll give you a B. I should have had you in class.
I tell you what, like I agree with that. I think it's definitely a disappointment, right? Because I thought that we were going to get a lot more back forth. The Otani Judge competition never developed. And really nobody could match Freeman, and that's fair. I mean, Freeman had an all-time amazing series,
unbelievable,
right? And especially on an ankle. And I kind of like one of the points he made after Game 1. Someone mentioned him, Kirk Gibson. He's like, "Hey, I played the whole game, right?" And he didn't pop in there. I cannot, having watched him in the NLCS and how compromised he looked in that series, like for him to have been able to, like, I don't know what magic Andrew Friedman and the medical staff there worked on him in between rounds, but that is a remarkable amount of recovery that allowed him to perform that way, especially when you think about how he looked in the NLCS.
Yeah, and a little bit of rest does help sometimes, I'm sure they shot him up a little bit with something that kept it a little numb, but the fact that he was able to do that, what he did was amazing. But Kirk Gibson came off the bench, off the best reliever in baseball. I mean, that's you only get one shot to do that. But Freeman was amazing. It was comparable to Fisk in '75 hitting the home run in extra innings. I mean, as Joe Carter hitting a walk-off home run to win the World Series might be the ultimate, but it's got to go up there in baseball lore.
Yeah,
So
100%.
let's switch over now. Let's jump over to something you're really familiar with. Your team you cover up north, the Blue Jays. Since we're giving out grades, my grade for them at the end of the year, John can attest to this. I think I gave them a D, and I was really disappointed because I thought the team was better than that, but ultimately didn't pan out. And you get to see them every day. First of all, what do you think of the team? What do you think they have to do going forward, and do you think they'll do it?
Okay, so you went from super hard in the World Series to, I think, super generous on the Jays. They, I think that in some ways, if you look at what they sort of made the best of a bad situation and were able to get some young players. But the fact that they're in that spot, I think at best you can give them a D minus for the year. And considering where they are in the control period that they have on Guerrero and Bichette and some of their other players, I think that you can say that this year or this past season was a real F for the Blue Jays, because it wasn't just that they struggled at the big league level, right? You saw so many different areas of the organization get exposed, whether it be their recent draft history and inability to restock the farm system, some issues in player development. They suffered the scourge of pitching injuries in the minor leagues, like many franchises, but at a degree and at a caliber of pitcher that has the potential to be really debilitating for at least a period of a couple of years. Because Ricky Tiedemann should have been up in the big leagues, getting pitching important innings, and now you're looking at him, okay, maybe being something for you in 2026. And Brandon Barriera is somebody whose progress was important. These are things that hurt. Alek Manoah, of course, rebounding and looking like he'd found himself, and then he blows out. These are things that don't just sort of disappear in the moment. They hurt you for years to come as well. So you put those things together. The way that the value went to zero on so many important assets from them, like Jordan Romano is a two-time All-Star closer, and you're thinking, okay, this is a piece that even if you have to sell, you're going to be able to get some good value back. Obviously, relievers have a lot of value, especially elite relievers at the deadline. And he's injured, and now he's looking like a non-tender possibility. Tim Meza is someone who's a key part of your bullpen, ended up getting released. He's another piece that you should have been able to sell off, and obviously found his way to the Yankees, and good for him, was able to finish out the Game 4 victory for the Yankees there. And so nice moment for him, well deserved. But they had so many pieces like that where value collapsed in so many areas. I can't recall another season quite like this one in Blue Jays history. Now, can they make some good out of it? I think they got some nice players who are at the trade deadline, who are in need of adjustments, and you're hoping that one or two of them may pan out. But you added some talent that gives you some more opportunities and some more flexibility and some more assets to work with. So they have a chance to make something out of this. But, this is a very, very fateful offseason, because they've got 1 year left with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. Those are the decisions that hang over the franchise more than anything else. And, we're seeing the end of this period or era of the front office. They closed out initially the Alex Anthopoulos cycle, which is, I would say, that was 16, 17, 18, 19. And then sort of their own build, which was 2020 to 24, that's expiring. And now can they reset a third window? That's really what's at stake this offseason.
Do you think, knowing what you know about the team, do you think they sign Guerrero and Bichette?
I think it's more clear right now on Guerrero, and the opportunity is there. I think the number is going to probably be very uncomfortable for the Blue Jays, and the Juan Soto potential, what he might do to the market depending on where his contract goes. How much is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. going to look at that, and how much does that complicate what the Blue Jays are trying to do with him? I think that's an interesting dynamic there. But is that going to be a number the Blue Jays are going to be comfortable with? Because it's going to be a contract that's going to be, 2.5 times the biggest contract they've ever had in franchise history, which is George Springer's 150 over 6. And then can they also build around that sufficient? Can they spend that and still put enough players around them to make it worthwhile? So I think that's question A. With Bo Bichette right now, I think it's a bit harder to figure out for both him and the club, what's the right number for him. I think if I think there's an opportunity there, and I do think that Bo wants to ideally stay here. He wants to stay with Vlad. He wants to be together with Vlad. They want to win together. But do the Blue Jays feel comfortable enough getting to a number that for him it represents a discount, but is still fair enough to market value? I think that sweet spot is immensely complicated with Bo. I think it's a little bit less complicated with Vladdy. And it's basically, do the Blue Jays want to pay him something akin to free agent prices now before he gets to the market? Or do they want to risk him being able to talk to 29 other clubs and losing control of the process? So I think that's where it stands at this moment with both those guys. And, are they going to get across the finish line? I don't know that anybody knows right now.
You think they can sign both guys?
Yeah, there's no reason not to. The Blue Jays, I had something Max Muncy said after the NLCS has really stuck with me. And he said, every team talks about wanting to win the World Series every year, but we're one of the few franchises that legitimately that's true for. And the Blue Jays can be that. They've got the infrastructure that you need, right? You've got a renovated stadium that's producing more revenue. You've got an ownership that has spent at record levels for the franchise and gone beyond the CBT. You have opportunities you have resources in the draft. You have really good resources in player development. Like, you have every tool you need to be successful. And if you can't keep your elite players, then what are you doing with all those tools, right? Now you can make a baseball decision and say, I don't believe this player is the cornerstone that is going to carry us to the next level. That's a reasonable baseball decision. But from a financial standpoint, they have all the tools to make that work. And so you've got to be good in other areas. You've got to produce players. So you've got some, 0-3 guys who are giving you surplus value and enabling your payroll to work. That's what the best franchises are able to do. But they can absolutely do it. It comes down to, do you want to?
I find, and I don't know how you feel about this, but the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets have now become the uber teams in baseball. Maybe the Phillies to a certain point. But I think we live in a day and age where the San Francisco Giants and the Boston Red Sox are not uber teams anymore. And that's by choice. I think the Blue Jays are probably on the same, maybe above those two teams. But there seems to be less and less superpowers in our game. And I wonder if the Blue Jays are going to look and say, well, we're kind of in between here. And I think that's where the problem lies, because you're either all in or you're not. Personally, I think if they don't sign both players, I don't know what having one of those players on the team means. I think the better value is having both players. So I think, the ownership is going to have to look up and say, I'll tell you, to me, who's going to really spend money this year is Steve Cohen with the Mets. He's gotten close. He's got a ton of money. He's on the same power as the Dodgers, same power as the Yankees. He knows what it feels like to be close to winning. I don't know if the Blue Jays are going to do that. And that's, maybe I'm scarred from past history, but I just don't see their front office being driven that way.
So I think that your assessment is about the super teams. That there's a new tier that's been created, right? There's the 300 something plus $1 million payroll team that is through all the luxury tax thresholds, and there's no there is no paying of mind to the CBT. And then there are the other clubs who are going to be like, we'll be, on the first or second level of CBT, but that's our range. And I think the Blue Jays exist there. I think that all the teams you mentioned, that's the second tier of club. I think that one of the differences when you're in that tier is what is your, how stable a base have you built? I think part of the issue for the Blue Jays is that their base isn't as steady as that of Atlanta or the one that Boston is developing right now. Or the one that the Padres have been on the way that they've been able to just regenerate talent. That's, I think, the fundamental question for the Blue Jays. It's, we just talked about, spent a long time talking about how deep the Dodgers are and how much depth they have and how they were able to go, 40-man roster and beyond to find productive players. The Blue Jays don't have that. They've got a lot of interchangeable parts on their 40-man roster. And they don't have their 25-man roster is insufficient to compete right now. So part of the question, part of the calculation has to be, okay, well, if we keep these guys, are we actually going to be able to leverage them? Or do we need to do some sort of retreat in order to accumulate or to build a better critical mass of talent where we can actually be competitive and sustain that for a little period of time? And that, I think, is the challenge. But for the Blue Jays, you can also look at it and say, well, if we just spent all this time going through the growing pains with Guerrero and Bichette, and now we're just as they're going to get to career peak, we're going to let some other team benefit from their career peak. Let's keep these players because we're going to regenerate them. We're going to spend all this time trying to recreate them.
Right.
And then you can kind of add other pieces around them and so still win. So I think the Blue Jays are in the spot that you mentioned, but there's a lot of different elements to it. And, also the barrier to entry in the American League is low. You don't have to be amazing to get in the postseason. So take your chances.
You don't have to be amazing, but they play in a tough division because the Yankees and Baltimore are now good. So there's always some iron in that division that and this year they slipped up, and obviously that you could slip up in some divisions almost like Arizona did and still have a running chance of making the playoffs. The American League East is one of those tough divisions that I don't know if you could slip up too much and get in. So they do play in a very tough division. Just having been on the ground floor and being out scouting so much the last few years, I really don't think they've drafted well. And obviously, you hate to take shots at people, but you do have to call, a spade a spade. And I think in this case, I look back at their drafts, and I don't think their drafts have been very good.
Yeah, I mean that's been a long running issue, and they have some players who can emerge, but they haven't had that deep draft class. Like the 2016 draft is the last really elite class that they've had, and look, maybe last year's group there are a few classes that it's still too early to tell on, but they haven't had the fast movers. They haven't had enough of those pleasant surprises. Spencer Horwitz and Davis Schneider are great low round pick stories and good for them. But they need to be complementary pieces. They can't be the primary return. And when those are sort of the best stories to emerge from your farm system, and then that becomes tough. And they haven't added enough young players. Really, Alek Manoah was the most recent player who kind of became part of the core through the draft, and that hurts you. So yeah, you mentioned the division. That's absolutely a problem. The Jays are definitely, if you look at the 5 teams in the American League East, and you look at sort of where the different organizations are top to bottom, you can easily make the case that the Jays are 5 of 5 in the American League because Tampa Bay's in a good spot, Boston's in a good spot with all the young players they've got coming. The Yankees obviously have a bunch of questions, but they still have Aaron Judge, which is a very good place to start, and Garrett Cole.
And they're going to spend money.
And they have money to spend, and Baltimore is good, and they're apparently going to spend money. We'll see, but
yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. Yeah, I think that's the true test of all those teams who tank and then eventually build through the draft, where you got probably 4 of the top 100 picks in the draft for the next 5 years. You get the get some pretty good players. But now all of a sudden you get to a point where you're winning. And I think where a front office really shows its true colors when you have resources, if you go out and spend them and try to, make it a collaboration between the young players you have and bring in the guys that put you over the hump. So I think Baltimore, I still remain to be seen if they shake off that small market mentality and jump up with the big boys. But as always, the American League is going to be a fun division. American League East, especially, to be interesting to see how the Blue Jays and what they do over the winter. So where are you off to next? I got to believe the GM meetings.
Yeah, GM meetings in San Antonio of all places. John Gibbons' whole
Gibby.
time.
Yeah,
that's it. I actually am gonna see him, which is gonna be fun to catch up with him on his home turf. I'm gonna hear a lot of Texas talk, probably more than I'd like, but it's gonna be fun, and we'll get the GM meetings. I don't know how you experience them, JP, but like for me, this is the real. That's the first time you start getting a sense of where the offseason might be going.
Right. It's always like it's like the first turn of running a full lap. It's like, okay, people start laying the groundwork. People start, talking about next year. But I think it all leads it. Our game seems to be a timeline, until the winter meetings comes. And that's even getting pushed out. I mean, guys are signing in late January now, and even into spring training. So it used to be the starting point. Hopefully, it'll still do it. So you have some interest when you get down there, something to hang your hat on instead of having lunch with Gibby. Make sure Gibby pays too, because that guy, the last time he paid will be the first time he pays.
I'll make sure to let him know about that and where that came from.
Well, Shai, listen, I can't thank you enough. It's always great catching up with you. It's good seeing you. I'm glad everything's good with you and your family. And I'm really happy to see how well your career's taken off. And you're one of the big guys in Canada now, and all across the United States, people know who you are. So keep up the good work. We'll have you on again down the road, but enjoy your off season as much as you can.
I appreciate that, JP. Always great to catch up with you as well. Always a fun chat. And again, grateful to you, being good to a young kid when I was starting out. So always fun having time to chat with you.
We had a few laughs. I'll leave it at that, right?
Definitely.
All right, Shai. We'll catch up with you.
Be well.
Thank you.
Great segment with Shai, JP. Great guy.
Yeah, good guy. Got his finger on the pulse, articulate, very intelligent about how the game's being played and what's going on, and just a really good baseball insider. So I was happy to have him on. He's a great kid.
Yes, certainly is. It was good to hear your interaction with him. We're going to talk about next week's show right now, or the next show that we do. I know that you're planning some year-end coverage for the 2024 season. What are you thinking of, and what's on your agenda?
I think we'll get some people on that are going to have their finger on the pulse as to what the offseason is going to look like. So we'll probably lean more into maybe some writers and some broadcasters and people like that have a good idea of what their teams might be looking at. We'll still try to get some different opinions of people and what they bring to the game. I'd like to get a trainer on and some other different people that have different roles in that game to enlighten some of the listeners to actually what goes on. So we'll make it fun. We'll have some good people on.
Yeah, you always have this entire season, and it's hard to believe that the baseball season for 2024 is over. But you brought on a wide variety of different guests from different areas in baseball, from the agents to the reporters to the insiders to the traveling secretaries. I mean, you've had a wide breadth of different insiders in this game. So it's been really fascinating all season long to hear your interaction with all these people that you've dealt with over all these years.
Yeah, we'll keep it up. We'll keep different people coming on. It's just great to hear from different people. And, there's a lot of people who love the game with different viewpoints. And, we'd like to give them an opportunity here to showcase their stuff.
Well, very good, JP. I want to thank you again. That's going to wrap it up for this week's Brushback. You could follow JP on X and Instagram at RICCIARDIJP. You could also subscribe to this show on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. All you got to do is click the subscribe button and check out the YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/Brushback with JP. And every show that we've done this season is there in the archives. Until next time, This is John Arezzi for JP. Have a great week, everyone.